Alrighty, in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all the aspects in Star Wars Unlimited. I'm going to be breaking them down, showing you all the cards that I think kind of elevate these aspects, talk a bit about the shortcomings that they have, and I thought it'd be a pretty good time to do this now that we have, 7 sets. This is the largest pool of cards that will ever be Premier Legal until next year, where again, it will go up to 7. So it was kind of a nice time to do a look back and kind of check again how good these colors have become. And what I'm going to be doing, it's going to be an aspect grading with heroic or villainous alignment. So I'll be talking about the 8 pairings that exist and not so much talking about the neutral aspect cards. But before we get going, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in some more content from me, do check out my Patreon as well. All right, so, pretty simple in the table of contents. Going to talk about all the aspect alignment combinations. That's, heroism blue, heroism green, etc. And then there'll be 8 of them, and I'm going to rank them, and we'll see. Some of my thoughts on these colors have changed over the year. I have done previous versions of this video, not exactly the same, where I've talked about aspects and their shortcomings and their pros and cons and ranked some of them. And some of it has definitely changed for me. But one thing has been fairly consistent is that villain aggression has been near the bottom. I jokingly ranked this 19th out of 8 because it is that far below the other 7. This color combination, villain red, has virtually been a miss since the game came out. Yes, there have been good decks, in fact, very good decks that have run villain aggression, but that's not really the point here. The point is those decks were running it for like 1 or 2 cards and were usually much more focused on the other color. Things like Talzin red most recently. It's not very much aggression in the deck, but Force Lightning, incredibly important for the whole archetype, and red as a whole was the only other color that would give you like early force unit plays, right? It's not that they were great. It's not like most of the red cards in that deck were great, but it filled a role. And same with like the Django, which may be the most dominant deck that's ever existed, was playing red because, there were 3 cards that would ping everything, like Devastator, IG-2000, and War Juggernaut. Good cards, mostly only good because Django broke them, right? So the leader had a huge thing there. And it's not to say that there's not anything powerful in this color, right? Ruthless Raider has been a pretty good staple in a lot of decks splashing villain red for a long time. Devastator's a powerful card. It's like a good ramp target for the decks that do play villain red right now, which is like Piet and Boba. It's like one of the better things you can ramp into in those shells. Force Lightning still around, although Talzin not at the top of its game right now. But overall, I think this color has kind of been missing an identity since the game came out, because it's torn in between like sort of supporting some aggressive style builds and then having these like big finishers. The removal has been kind of disjointed in the color. There's never been really anything to focus on with villain aggression. It's always just been a secondary color where it picks some of the like very powerful cards in the color to elevate a deck, like I've mentioned with Django and Talzin, and now with these like ramp style decks. So what you're definitely not seeing here is that this color is completely absent from the game. It's been a presence in the game. It's just that the color itself has never been the focus of any of the decks utilizing it. It's always been more of a secondary thing. And, I have not been really impressed, at least in the current state of the games after set 6, with really anything running this color. I mentioned like the Bobas and the Piets of the world. I think those decks are fine. They're like just linear ramp decks that play Ruthless Raider and Devastator. That's like mostly why, and the Fulminator in one of them. Like that's kind of the thing there. And don't think other than like that there's much else to do with red. And even red villain like a CAD, often that deck, the only red card it was running was like Tarkin Town, because it was mostly just a mono yellow deck. But Yeah, that's my thoughts on Villain Red. Very low on the list for me. And speaking of Villain Yellow, oh, have the mighty have fallen, or maybe this color was actually never that mighty, and it had more to do with the busted leaders in Villain Yellow, like Boba and Django. But, there's good cards here. Overall, as more and more sets have come out and more synergies have like taken hold, and like powerful build around mechanics and like decks have become much more cohesive, this color has decreased in that because there actually isn't that much built-in synergy. There's just like good standalone cards, right? Like look at Shin Hati, a very good card, but there's not much synergistic stuff going on here because you can't really build a powerful force deck in yellow villain. You have like Bazine, just a really good card, but the only synergy here that outside of just like it being solid is McClunky and Cad Bane, right? So you're not a lot of the cards, and Aura Sync, same thing. It's just one of the best 2-drops in the game. But then what? There's not a lot else in this Villain Yellow that really pushes it forward. So Villain Yellow has also kind of been missing something for a while, and there's a few decks that have been playing this color for a long time, like Cad Bane. Cad Bane is probably the one that most elevates this color because he creates synergy out of most of the good cards in this aspect, right? All the underworld stuff kind of has no synergy outside of Cad Bane, which is a very, actually, something I've noted in other videos. It's actually kind of strange because it's such a pushed trait in this game, but there's nothing to do with it outside of put those cards in a Cad Bane deck and then the one call out card, which is McClunky. But you can't like build an underworld deck and like theme underworld deck and in a non-Cad Bane deck because there's nothing to do with it. But Cad Bane at least did manage to elevate this color to another level. And it's interesting that it happens to be that it's just the Villain Yellow leaders are the ones that kind of make this color do what it needs to do, like Boba and Django. You see Vader play yellow mostly because it's the only color that offered it 1-drops to play like 2 of on the first turn. There's like good support cards like No Good to Me Dead in this color. There's like one of the spike beat control cards in the Lurking TIE Phantom. But overall, the power here hasn't increased much since like set 2. It's been roughly the same good cards for a long time, with some new underworld cards coming in. And while there is some power here, it doesn't anymore feel like Villain Yellow is something that you need to be that worried about in set 6. There's not a lot of powerful stuff being pushed in this aspect. At number 6, we got Yellow Cunning. So, this is also maybe a color that has like gone up and down in its power level. Some can remember how dominant this one was with Han Mono Yellow when DJ was still around. But it's another one that probably just hasn't gotten much better in a long time. There's not a lot of new cards in this color combination to like elevate decks, right? The ones that are still playing this are the ones running the same old cards like Quinlan and Han. And oftentimes it's just not like the focus of most decks' attention. You can't get past the fact that Han is still an incredibly dominant deck, and he does make Cunning Hero just a better color than it would otherwise be. But outside of him, most of the other ones that would be running this have actually probably gotten weaker over time. Like Quinlan is probably not on top of his game since the Force Throw suspension. Aggro yellow decks in Hero, like Sabine, has always preferred other colors. Kazuda has largely not been a top contender because there's not a ton actually here in terms of high level power. And most of the high level power are things that are much better with specific leaders, like Plo Koon and Quinlan, or Falcon and Han. And, Falcon is it's kind of its own thing in general. It's one of the best cards in the game, which, how weak can this color really be? Bamboozle's another really cool one, but this one's not even locked necessarily into hero yellow. You can play this in other decks as well, but there's certainly good stuff here. It's just not a ton. And, I think the next 5 we'll see, have been a little more powerful and definitely have improved in power more in the last couple sets than Cunning Hero has. And number 5, one that I used to rank near the top, is now in the bottom 50%, and that's Villainous Vigilance. And what is really the hallmark of this color is control. It's really all that's ever been offered for this color pair. The problem is, since like set 4, there's hardly been anything good printed for that deck type in this color. So you're stuck with the same really good stuff from sets 1 and 2 mostly. But who can even like begin to question whether or not this is like the premium removal color, right? This is the color that has the board wipe, Super Laser Blast. This has the cheapest, most powerful removal in the game, Power of the Dark Side, although that card has seriously diminished in its value with set 6 and how a lot of decks are putting tokens into play, going wide. You have like Avenger, one of the cleanest finishers in the game. No Glory, another very like a power crept Vanquish, right? It's just that mostly there's no other identity to this color other than control, and it certainly looks to me like the focus of removal-based control is not what FFG is trying to support anymore for this color. So we need something else to happen here, and it hasn't so much, right? You can say the Darth Vader from Legends of the Force was a big upgrade, but that card's actually not that good unless you're gonna ambush with it, and even then a lot of decks that could be ambushing with it are cutting it entirely. The card's fine. I think Legends of the Force Vader is probably a pretty overrated card, and certainly next set when all those ambushing tools, or many of them, go away, it's gonna get even worse. But like, he's a great card. It's just like, sure, it's still largely either a control tool or just a pair with ECL and hope you spike with it. And I'm hoping we see a little more built into this color, because right now it's in kind of a messy state, because again, like, the only thing that it's really pushing is this control stuff, which is something the game is not trying to push that heavily anymore. And then all the other interesting stuff that maybe you could do with Villain Blue hasn't been supported enough. I know it's like grit has been like a big thing for this color, but grit is like a pretty anemic keyword as currently constructed in the game, and doesn't allow much build around potential currently. And if you're not trying to power the dark side people, there's not a lot else that you want to be doing with this color. And at number 4, one that I think early in the game I would have ranked as number 1 is Villain Command. And we see it back to back with Villain Blue, and those two colors are often paired together in villainous decks. But again, very similar to the Vigilance here is that this color has not changed much in a long time. The top 3 cards there have been like 3 of the best cards in the game since the game came out. But like, they're still the 3 best cards in Command, basically. And they've all gotten way weaker. Like Barrage, it keeps getting talked about like some game-breaking card. The card is like fine right now. It is really not that great in a lot of decks. In the decks that do play it, there's a ton of counterplay against them. Right now, it's like Piet and Boba, like basically just hoping that they can spike this onto one of their ships to clear board, or Kira, which has always had very huge synergy with the card itself, but even her she has difficulty enabling this on her flip turn with how good other decks have gotten in disrupting the early mid game. So yes, Barrage used to be one of, if not the best card in the game. It's just not anymore. The card is hated on a lot, but it's really like, I kind of worry for this color once Barrage goes away, because like there's tons of power leaving this color, right? Ramp has been the other primary thing that green villain has done, because it was the only color that could play 6 pieces of 3-cost ramp and be very consistent in its ramp. They're both leaving, right? Resupply as well. So like you're losing ramp, you're losing overwhelming barrage. Vader has been like fine recently. It's just that like hero grindy decks do so much more now that Vader isn't even sometimes good at catching you up in those games. Look at the bottom row, right? You've got like we got a Battlefield Marine. That's great. Doesn't like usually gel into what this color has done, which has been ramping. It's like an auto include in all these command decks, but it's not like really changing any build, so to speak. And Craving Power, which is just like different overwhelming barrage. You got one of the better finishers in the game, but that's also from set 1 in Devastator. The color's still very strong because ramp is strong, and having 6 copies of it is good. So like a lot of decks right now still just rely on that element of this color to elevate them, right? Piet, Boba, Kira. These are all decks, Palpatine if you're going to play it, all decks that basically could not exist if it wasn't for ramp, and they're all gonna basically stop existing unless ramp is re-injected into the game in set 7 in some capacity. But such an important part, such a glue for this deck is the fact that it got to basically double up on resupply. And you know, past that, it doesn't do anything super special anymore. And it's still, I would say, better than the previous colors we've seen because of how powerful ramp is, right? Like, this rank is almost entirely tied to the ramp consistency that you get by playing this color, but it certainly is not, like, number 1 anymore for me. At number 3, one of the last 3 remaining heroic combos. So you see the top 3 will all be heroic, but we got blue here. And blue, it's mostly the support color right now in hero decks that run it, but it is like maximum support. First of all, Luke Skywalker, he might even be better now than he was when the game first came out. Somehow this card is just like turbocharged. It is so powerful, and they have a new top-end finisher in Bo-Katan that is also just like wildly great, like way better than I even thought it would be when I first read it. Past that, you get a lot of like interesting things. You get Sentinels, you get a lot of Restore in this color, you get some early game plays, you get some mid game support. Shielded units are very valuable in the game right now in general, as removal has gotten worse, and decks running a bunch of hard event based removal have gotten worse. Then shielded units get even better because combat doesn't affect them nearly as much as targeted removal. So you have a very powerful support color here. This kind of color can be run in like mid-range decks with green. You see them with like Rey and Yoda and stuff like that. It can be run in Force Shells with red and with green, right? Where it's kind of paired with Anakin or Han 2 to support their stuff. And there's good force payoffs in this color, like Itinerant Warrior and Chirrut, of course, but that's not a heroic card. It can be run even in like non-force mid-range red blue. Blue yellow, no, but you know, blue yellow isn't really a color combination that has ever worked in this game, even in villain, so it gets a pass there. So while maybe not as like the focus of decks that it's played in as much as the next 2 that we will see, it is certainly incredibly powerful, and some of the best cards in those decks are blue. The reason I put it 3 and not 2 or 1 is because you're seeing a moment just how much beef those 2 colors have, and they are much more the centerpieces of their respective decks usually. All right, let's look at aggression heroism now. So this color has a lot going on. So first of all, basically since at 1, it's had the best turn 1 plays in the game, and they still are, Sabine and A-Wing, and now, better than both of those, is Nemec. So when you're in this color, your turn 1 is just solved. It's crazy powerful. These units have just been glue pieces for this color type forever. Early on, this was mostly just an aggro color, and it's still an aggro color, but it can now be played much more in mid-range as well. So force decks were able to move past just pure aggro because Ki-Adi-Mundi is like the best card draw card in the game. There's even like the Mace Windu. I didn't even put it on this, right? So they were able to move into more mid-range shells with red focus. You still have the ECL payoffs for red-green in Poe and Wrecker. You now have so much choices here. And let's not even forget things like Cassian, who would still be in my top 10 of cards, period, in this game. And Red 5, which can support multiple archetypes, whether or not they're more aggressive or more controlling. If they're with Hantu, with Grogu, or good against Hantu because all their units come in weakened. There's just so much utility in this color, and while it still does slant primarily aggressive, can see that like decks have been able to just build pure mid-range value decks centered around red, like Anakin, paired with another color that we'll see in a moment, right? This is just a color that you wouldn't expect to get so much value put into it, but then all of a sudden it did, right? Cassian, Nemec, Ki-Adi-Mundi, these are like value plays that are also often aggressive, and that kind of elevated aggro in general, made it much more redundant, made it able to like persist much later into endgames, right? Quinlan's always been an aggro deck that relied a lot on like smuggle upsides from Cassian, and also the cunning smuggle stuff like Blaster and L3, but it has been an aggro deck that doesn't play just like Go Face, like Sabine would often do. And the ability for this color to kind of weave between Go Face aggro, tempo aggro, pure mid-range, and then even value town mid-range with the force stuff has elevated it for me a lot over the year. And right now, I'd put it at number 2. You know, right around where I would rate the vigilance heroism color as well. But for me, there is a clear number 1, and it is Command Hero. And this color did not start off very strong in this game. In fact, early on in like set 1, there were Command Hero decks like Sabine, but Command was a splash color, and largely the most important part about playing it was Energy Conversion Lab. Han Green was a fine deck at the time, but I would not have called it a special deck at the time. And some of the top end that you see here, like U-Wing and Home 1, are from set 1. A lot on this board here, though, it is not. It is actually a lot of year 2. Mina, Captain Typho, Obi-Wan, Chewbacca, Blue Leader, Kelleran, Queen Amidala. All those cards are year 2 cards. They will all be sticking around. What this color can do is like almost everything. There's Restore. There's some of the best Sentinels in the game. There's probably the best top end at this point in the game. Some of the best mid-range cards and value cards in the game. You got cheese out cards like Chewbacca. You have space units. You have ground units. They're all overstated. I didn't even put Battlefield Marine on this page because I couldn't fit it. It's doing everything except basically one thing, which is removal. There is no removal in this color, and usually that's meant that it's been paired with blue if you're looking for that kind of element to your deck, or it's been paired in a color that mostly is just trying to be aggressive, like with Han, where, you know, it doesn't have removal, but it's the deck that's asking your opponent if they had removal most of the time. But even now, it's evolved past that into red-green value mid-range, and often those decks don't even play removal. And how do they survive into the late game? It's just because they outvalue and all their units are bigger than their opponent's units. And that's what this color does. It does so much. You can fix its weaknesses pretty easily if you want. Like I said, removal is the main one, and pairing this with blue has proven over the year to be a very solid base for a deck. And now with how powerful the new additions to this color have become in the last set or two, I think this is an easy slam dunk number one. I'm hoping some other colors actually catch up to this, because this is certainly just like the premier mid-range color right now. It's very difficult for other decks to compete on that axis. And kind of the issue with the mid-range pile right now is that it's so beefy and strong against aggro because of Restore and Sentinel, but then also somehow really good against control because of all the value plays that it can make. Look at that whole top row. Units that make units are always a very difficult thing for control decks to handle. That you have a like mid-range being good against aggro and against control means mid-range is king. And now it's like which mid-range can kind of like suffocate the other mid-range decks. And I think they basically all just have to include this color if they're trying. And which ones come up on top, well, we'll figure that out over the next few months. But going into the next set, it would be nice to see other colors be able to compete on some of Command Heroism's axis, because it's doing so much better than basically any other card type color. And Villain has like no shot right now engaging in a mid-range war. Villain in general, I'll talk about it now, just kind of, or in a moment. We're kind of wrapping up on Command, but yeah, like it's so difficult for anyone to mess with this pile of cards, and in many cases including them in your deck is proving to be very good idea. But yeah, like I mentioned just a moment ago, it is very difficult for villain decks to compete with hero decks right now. They're kind of relegated into a couple things. One is like ramp cheese out strategies like Piet and Boba, and then you can kind of include any space aggro like a Vader deck into that pool, right? They're largely just trying to ignore what their opponent is doing, go over the top of it with ramp, or just spam space and see if that carries them. And then you can still run like blue-green mid-range control, Kira style decks. Maybe Palpatine can try to exploit the mid-range, but those mid-range decks are so quick also that even that might not be as easy as it used to be. So Villain in a very off spot right now compared to heroes, because even like the force stuff is just better in hero. The aggro is better in hero. The mid-range is better in hero. It's just control and ramp that's really not better in hero. And the ramp decks are what they are. They're just like draw the ramp, draw the big thing, hope it gets there, with nuance. I'm just speaking a little bit with hyperbole, but if you're not going to do that, control. And like control, I just mentioned, like how do you control a deck playing all that like cards that make cards, right? It's very difficult to deal with the amount of value that Command Heroism puts on the table. So that's kind of why I end up with Command so high, why most of the villain stuff ended up near the bottom 50%. And yeah, like still excited to see how this stuff changes over the next few months. And then certainly once rotation happens, let me know what you think are the best colors in the game. Anything you think I missed or underrated, maybe overrated. Be great to hear it. And until next time, take care.